Our next story is about a mass murder. It happened in China. I'm talking about that deadly Wuhan virus wave. The massive surge in infections, the overflowing hospitals and morgues, and the desperate cries for help. We saw all of it, even though China tried its best to hide. Beijing let the Wuhan virus rip through its population, and now we know how many lives it took. At least 1 million. The virus killed 1 million people in China. And this is just in the last 2 months. This toll is for the third wave, the one that started in December 2022. 1 million at the very least. Some projections are higher. Studies say anywhere between 1 and 1.5 million people could have died in China in these last 2 months. And make no mistake, they died not just because of a virus, but also because of an incompetent state. China exited the zero COVID policy without a plan. And the people of China paid for it with their lives. Now, we know that China does not share data. So where did we get these numbers? I'll tell you about the source. Many experts have been tracking the third wave in China. They are from a range of institutions like the University of North Carolina, the Fudan University in Shanghai, the University of Hong Kong, the University of Texas, the Columbia University, and many others. They're all using different models. They're all working separately, but their conclusions are strikingly similar. They've all arrived at the same range, 1 to 1.5 million deaths in China. Do you know what is China's official death toll? 87,468. That's it. 87,000 deaths for the entire pandemic, not just the third wave. Now, you don't need an expert to know that this is an undercount. The Chinese system enables it. They have a very narrow definition of what counts as a COVID death. The most glaring omission is this one. Those who died outside hospitals are excluded. They're simply not part of the data set. In the third wave, Chinese officials inserted more filters. Those who had a Wuhan virus infection and died of liver, kidney, or cardiac failures were left out. So the only deaths that were counted were deaths by respiratory failures in a hospital. China is clearly trying to be evasive. Even the World Health Organization has called Beijing out for this.
WHO still believes that deaths are heavily underreported from China. And this is in relation to the definitions that are used, but also to the need for doctors and those reporting in the public health system to be encouraged to report these cases and not discouraged.
The WHO seems to have found its spine. In the initial days, it praised China's response. You may remember this photograph. That's Dr. Tedros, the Director General of the World Health Organization, smiling and shaking hands with Xi Jinping, the President of China. Dr. Tedros paid a visit to Beijing in January 2020. He declared that the Chinese leadership is, quote-unquote, setting a new standard for outbreak response. Within weeks, that same leadership in China unleashed a pandemic on the world. The plan to appease Beijing failed. The World Health Organization is now struggling to get answers. The agency was probing the origins of the pandemic. That investigation had to be put on hold because China refuses to cooperate. Dr. Tedros has been writing letters to Beijing. Listen to what he said about this recently. As recently as 7 weeks ago, I sent a letter to a top official in China asking for cooperation. I assure you we will continue to push and continue to pursue until we get the answer. But China is pushing back. Here is the Chinese Foreign Ministry's response. We have received 2 WHO expert teams for origin study in China and concluded a report that is science-based and authoritative. What does that mean? It means that China is telling the WHO, we've done our bit, now don't expect anything else. Beijing is stonewalling the probe. Listen to what a WHO spokesperson then said, and I'm quoting again. We have repeatedly and publicly said that the origin needs investigating and China must provide access and information for this to happen. And if it doesn't happen, our efforts to understand the origins will remain rather stymied. The world body now sounds helpless. China has been allowed to get away at every turn. First, when it let a virus spread. Then, when it hid the origins of the pandemic, and now when it's underplaying the mass murder of its own people.